'cause Christ is born.
Hey Gina, this is Ann. Just want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas. We always love having you filling in for Brian. His listeners love you, and you always do a great job, and we love you. Merry Christmas.
Behold, throughout the
Love you. Merry Christmas to you, Ann Reed. Thank you for that, Jeff. That's so nice. We are debating some of the issues around Christmas, which, people say, well, it's unsavory to debate around Christmas. Maybe. But I also think drilling down to the true meaning of Christmas and how we can best celebrate that as Christians is part of our responsibility. And so to that end, I have historian, author, speaker, genius, Bill Federer on with me. And I want to let him finish up because he has such a plethora of amazingness to share with us. And he was just getting into the real brass of it all. Bill Federer, welcome back. And please do continue with our story of St. Nicholas and really the history of Christmas in general, Bill.
Well, thanks, Gina. And again, Christmas is to celebrate the birth of Christ. And even though we can't totally be sure of what day of the year it was, the tradition has been December 25th. But Martin Luther, he had a spiritual experience, and he moved all the gift-giving to December 25th, so all gifts come from the Christ child. But Henry VIII brought the Reformation to England, not because he had a spiritual experience. He just wanted another wife. The Pope wouldn't recognize his divorce. He decides to make himself his own Pope. He goes on to have 6 wives. And the group that started to purify the Church of England, they were called the Puritans. And so we have these 2 groups in England. Now, Henry VIII, during his time, Christmas became sort of a partying, sort of a Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras was the day before Lent when you would fast 40 days before Easter, and now it's this lewd party in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Well, so under Henry VIII, Christmas was this drinking, carousing, wassailing, where you'd take some drink of booze and throw the rest of it on a plant so that have a nice harvest the next year or whatever. And so he brought back an old Roman holiday called Saturnalia. Now, Britain used to be a Roman colony, and Saturn was the god of feasting and plenty and merriment. If you ever saw the Christmas Carol with Charles Dickens, you see the spirit of Christmas present is this big guy with green robes and a wreath in his hair and a goblet of wine and grapes all around and sort of the ho-ho happy party guy. And you're asking yourself, who is this guy? Sort of looks like Santa, but he sort of looks like some Greek god. Well, that was Saturn, but they Christianized him and called him Father Christmas. They couldn't call him St. Nicholas because St. Nicholas was outlawed because of the Reformation. And so, but this was sort of the attitude. Now, the Puritans took over England in 1640. They chopped off King Charles I's head, and for 15 years, they outlawed Christmas. They said, can God be honored by this mad mirth and hard drinking and a partying fit for a Bacchus or a Mohammedan Ramadan? Anyway, when the Pilgrims came over, they did not celebrate Christmas. They said that the Sabbath is their holy day, all the rest are the same. When the Puritans settled Massachusetts, they didn't celebrate Christmas. They had a 5-shilling fine for anybody caught celebrating Christmas. But the Dutch loved Christmas. They loved Santa Claus. And the Dutch settled New Amsterdam, which became New York. So the Dutch, the story is taken from, you know how the Catholic stories of St. Peter's at the gates of heaven? Well, the Greeks had their version, and it was this. In Revelation, it says, Jesus will return at the end of the world to judge the living and the dead, riding a white horse. The saints will come back with him riding white horses. St. Nicholas is a saint, so certainly he'll be one of those riding a white horse. He just gets to come back once a year for a little mini judgment, a little checkup in the middle of the night, right?
Oh, and that's where they're making a list,
in Norway,
checking
they
it
didn't
twice.
have horses, so he's riding a reindeer. And then the Lamb's Book of Life and the Book of Works turns into the Book of the Naughty and the Nice, and the angels turn into the elves, and the saints come from where? Heaven, the celestial city, the New Jerusalem that turns into the North Pole. So you can see it's getting away from its biblical roots.
Yeah.
But the Dutch have St. Nicholas coming from Holland, dressed as a bishop, riding a white horse every year. And he gives presents to the good kids, and the naughty kids, he has a helper named Zwarte Piet. He's a Moorish costumed helper. He's a Muslim. And they tell the kids that if you're naughty, Zwarte Piet will put you in a gunny sack, take you back to Spain, and sell you into Muslim slavery. Because the Muslims controlled Spain for 700 years, and they imprisoned and enslaved millions of Europeans. There were entire Catholic orders in Europe throughout the entire Middle Ages called the Trinitarians. The head of the order was called the ransomer, and they would collect alms and donations and try to ransom back your friend who was kidnapped. So anyway, when you tell these little kids that Santa was coming, they'd start crying because they thought it might be their last night on with their family. I did an interview, the old humorous story. And a caller says, yeah, I was raised in Europe, and every Christmas Eve, all the little boys would make sure to go to sleep on Christmas Eve with pocket knives in their pockets.
Oh.
I said, why is that? He goes, that's to cut ourselves out of the gunny sack in case Svart Day Pete took us.
Oh.
Anyways, but the Dutch settled New Amsterdam. The ship they had didn't have a mermaid or a Poseidon on the front. It had a St. Nicholas because he was the patron saint of sailors, because there was a story the Greeks had that he prayed and the sea got calm so the fishermen could come back. And so the first church the Dutch Reformed had in New York, or New Amsterdam, was St. Nicholas Dutch Reformed Church. So Teddy Roosevelt went there, and it was the biggest church in downtown Manhattan,
Wow.
big stone cathedral, but then they sold it in the 1940s to a Sinclair Oil Company who tore it down. But in New York, do I have another minute or two?
Sure, go.
There was a author named Washington Irving. He lived in New York. He's the one who gave us Rip Van Winkle and Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And Washington Irving wrote Dietrich Knickerbocker's History of New York from its founding to the end of the Dutch dynasty. And so Dietrich Knickerbocker was his made-up name, and it got so popular, the basketball team's named New York Knicks after Knickerbocker. That's Washington Irving's name.
Yeah.
And so he described St. Nicholas visiting once a year, just like over in Holland, but Washington Irving describes him dressed not as a bishop, but in a Dutch outfit of long trunk hose, leather belt, boots, and a stocking hat. And he flies in his wagon over the treetops once a year, throwing out presents to his favorites. And then you have, in New York, Clement Moore, Anglican Hebrew professor, writes a poem for his children, A Visit from St. Nicholas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. But now he's shrunk. He's a right jolly old elf. I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. And then you come to the Civil War, middle 1800s. The Harper's Weekly magazine has an illustrator named Thomas Nast, N-A-S-T, and he's the one who gave us the Republican elephant and the Democrat mule. He invented those. He's a cartoonist, right? Well, he's the first one to draw a picture of St. Nicholas with a North Pole sign behind him.
There you go.
And this was actually a political jab at the South during the Civil War to say St. Nicholas was associated with the North. And had, St. Nicholas talking to the Union troops with the Union flag and so forth. And then you have Coca-Cola in 1930s. They invented mass marketing. Coca-Cola is the most well-known trademarked name in the world. And they had an artist, Haddon Sundblom, do a painting of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, once a year for 30 years. And now he's full-grown, ruddy complexion, rosy cheeks, nice, huggable grandfather. And that's the image that we have today. But if you peel back the layers, you see that there really was someone named Nicholas who loved Jesus so much that he went into the ministry, became a minister and a bishop. He was imprisoned for his Christian faith, willing to die for Jesus. He got out, and he preaches against sexual immorality and pagan worship of Diana. And he stands up for the Bible, doctrine, and purity, and then slaps Arius across the face, started the Arian heresy. So he was a fire and brimstone type of preacher. And he stood up to corrupt politicians, willing to call them out on their backroom corrupt deals. And finally, he was generous, and he gave to the poor. And those are the qualities that we remember when we think of St. Nicholas.
That is amazing. It never ceases to amaze me, all of that history. And I think it would make a great gift. There really is a Santa Claus, History of St. Nicholas and Christ. And that is, of course, by our guest, Bill Federer. Bill, the merriest of Christmases to you and your family this year.
Well, same to you, Gina. You and John are tremendous friends. And I did want to mention for the audience, the Santa Claus is the Dutch pronunciation of St. Nicholas.
Right.
Sant Niklaus.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Merry Christmas to all, and to all
Merry
a good
Christmas.
night.
You too, Bill Federer. You can absolutely find him at AmericanMinute.com. I'm telling you, if you're a homeschooler, even if you're not a homeschooler, since the schools don't teach history anymore, get him on AmericanMinute.com and get the book. There really is a Santa Claus, the History of St. Nicholas and Christ. What an amazing man. This man, Bill Federer, like so many that I see today, will be in the history books as somebody who is just unparalleled in our culture today in fighting and in knowledge and in the teaching of true history. I want to go back to your phone calls because you've been so amazingly patient. I have to go first to Brad calling from Texas. Brad, go ahead.
Hey, I
Hello.
just had a comment about the lady that said something about Christians should never celebrate Santa Claus with their kids. I just want to say that when I was a kid, we did Santa Claus, and I actually had a very analytical mind, and I probably by about the age of 8 didn't believe in Santa Claus anymore. But I kept the ruse up so I could still get presents. Anyway, when I finally had the moment where it was revealed that it wasn't, that it was all a farce. It was actually the Tooth Fairy. And I made the comment to my dad, "Don't you think I'm a little old for that?" And he made sure to say to me, "Yes, Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, all those aren't real, but don't you forget that God is real." He wanted to make that point. And when he said that to me, it was like, well, yeah, of course. I never put Santa and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy up on the same level that I did with God. It was,
Because that's taught. Because you can teach that along with the enjoyment and the fun, with a twinkle in your eye and a wink. I don't know. That's my feeling. But anyway, Brad, I appreciate your call, and I think that you echo what many Americans believe, is that as long as there's no parallel, that and this is the other thing regarding the lie, about the fact that we have to. People are saying, well, it's a lie. First of all, it's not really a lie after what Bill Federer just told you. To say that, there's a little elf that runs around and does this is a different thing from saying this spirit of bold expression of your faith, the spirit of being willing to take on the culture war based on your faith, especially with all the Islamic terror we're encountering today. I kind of think it's a good message, but that's what I think. I want to get back to what you think. I'm going to go to you, Georgia, next. But first, we've got a little break here. 888-589-8840 is the phone number. We want to hear from you. What do you think about what Bill Federer said? Did it change anything that you think? Will you exchange gifts this Christmas? If so, what's the favorite gift you're giving? We want to hear from you. 888-589-8840. The rest of the show, it's all yours. It's just you and me celebrating as we go into Christmas Eve. I'm Dr. Gina, filling in for Brian Fisher. We'll be back with more right after this.